Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. I still want to wish you a happy new year 2022. The last year was very turbulent and one can say exciting in a sense. So let's hope that 2022 will get a little better, but I doubt it actually. I think that Germany has reached peak corruption, or let me rephrase that right away. For there to be a peak, it must go up and then down again, and I haven't seen that it goes down. So let's just say Germany is more corrupt than it has ever been, and I think it just increases pretty much continuously. Alright, so in today's video I want to tell you why I think that is. I want to go over some examples and show you where the difference is to, let's say, a couple of decades ago. These examples include not only a very exotic banking family, but also an illustrious pharmaceutical company from the United States that was actually founded by a German. Alright, but before we begin, I want to thank all my supporters and my subscribers again. Thank you so much for your loyalty and your continuing support and interest in my channel. If you find this information entertaining or useful, like, share and subscribe, and if you want to, you can support my channel via Patreon or Subscribestar. Okay, right at the beginning I want to say that politics in a democracy is of course always corrupt. There are always rich and powerful people or organizations, and they try to influence parliamentarians or political parties. In Germany, or in the German system, the political parties are really powerful and single politicians cannot do a lot. It is the parties that decide who rises and who will just stay an insignificant little party soldier, maybe even on the regional level. These parties are of course in most cases controlled by international globalist organizations, just like the Atlantikbrücke, for example. That was founded by a certain member of the Warburg family. I talked about this before many times, and today also this Warburg family makes an appearance in one of the examples that I choose. So the rich and powerful have of course always influenced politics and politicians, but now, and this is my basic point of today's video, it is very overt. And whereas back then, let's say in the 90s or in the 80s, a revelation of such corruption has caused a government crisis, or at least ended the career of an individual involved politician, nowadays it is pretty much ignored and then memory hold. People just shrug their shoulders and think, yeah, and what else is new? And they just live with it. And we saw that in many cases in the year 2000 and 2021, but also already in previous years. And at least according to my memory, or at least in my opinion, this is qualitatively very new. Back then, in the olden days, let's say, when this stuff came to light and the press covered it, then it really caused a big crisis and politicians lost their careers over this. A great example is the corruption scandal in the CDU party that was revealed after Helmut Kohl, the chancellor of the reunification, lost to Gerhard Schröder, a social democrat, in 1998. The scandal involved anonymous donations for a CDU slush fund, and it damaged the whole party and many politicians in the CDU. And it was this very scandal that made Angela Merkel's ascent possible in the first place. Another example from the US is maybe the Watergate scandal. That caused a big crisis in the United States, but compared to what is happening now and how security and intelligence agencies are used in a political sense, maybe a million times a day, by automatic digital means, that is by comparison absolutely outrageous, and nowadays nothing really happens. People don't really care about it, and it doesn't really end anybody's career. But what happened there at the Watergate Hotel, that is by comparison, it is minuscule, it is insignificant compared to what goes on a daily basis right now. And I think when it comes to corruption of politicians and parties, we have a similar situation by comparison. So let's start with our first example from more recent times, and that is now the Social Democratic Party of Germany, SPD. That is the party that also Mr. Olaf Scholz, our current chancellor, belongs to. They had a big party convention in December, and of course these conventions, they cost a lot of money because of all the food and all the fine drinks and all that stuff. Now, how are parties funded normally? They are funded by the taxpayer, and that is in proportion to the votes that they get during elections. But that is not enough for these greedy people, of course, so there are also donations, and that's a normal thing. But also these party conventions, they get sponsored these days now. So here is a long list of companies that donated here. Now, I think that is already a gray area, but when these are companies that are at the core of political decision making, then I think this gray area is no longer where we are at. This is over the red line, but Mr. Scholz said there are no red lines anymore, so maybe that's not so bad then. See, among the companies that donated or that supported this party convention of the SPD, a big party indeed, I assume, were companies such as Microsoft, and also wind energy companies and Pfizer. Now, why is that problematic? Well, I think it is very problematic because the government just passed a law that says that all healthcare workers must get a certain pharmaceutical product very soon or they will lose their jobs. And of course, they also said that they want to build more wind energy plants and so on and so on. And also Microsoft, I want to point out here, the government, or let's say the state, they're using a lot of Windows PCs. For some weird reason, they are sticking to that and they pay a lot of money to Microsoft instead of opting for other operating systems like Linux, for example. They could save a lot of money in doing so. But for some strange reason, I cannot really put my finger on it, they just want to stay with this very costly, well, not so great operating system from Microsoft. Must be one big coincidence. Now, how would you feel if BMW, let's say, would be on that list and just the next month the current German government would pass a law that says that every German citizen needs to buy a BMW until March or they will go to jail? Wouldn't you find that very curious? And if you think that there is a huge difference between the examples I just gave you and this fictitious example with BMW, then I would think that that shows that you're already a little bit brainwashed. Of course, it's not literally the same thing, but if you don't see the parallel, then, well, then the conditioning really was successful, I guess. And then as a second example, I once again want to point your direction to the SPD in Hamburg, and that is where Mr. Olaf Scholz, our current chancellor, was first mayor for a long time. And under his rule, a certain banking clan, the Warburg Bank, they were stealing taxpayers' money in the so-called Comex business or Comex scandal. In short, banks who were involved in these kinds of deals, they claimed that they paid X amount of taxes for profits or gains with stocks that they never actually paid, and then they asked for some of these taxes back in their tax declaration. So they were basically lying about having paid X amount in taxes and then they got part of it back. So this whole financial transaction in the end was just stealing from the German taxpayer. And the Warburg Bank was especially active in this domain, and it was uncovered that they did that. Then not only was there a trial, but the state of Hamburg should have asked for this tax money back that the Warburg Bank stole from the German taxpayers. But the state of Hamburg just said, no, that's too tedious, we don't want this tax money back. The Warburg Bank should just keep that stolen money. And it is of course completely unrelated that just around that time in 2017 the Social Democratic Party in Hamburg Mitte received an over 40,000 euro record donation from the Warburg Bank. Isn't that a coincidence? And this is why I call Olaf Scholz the Warburg Chancellor. He's not working for the German people, he is working for the House Warburg. Alright, so once again, for me, the big difference to former times when this kind of stuff actually resulted in scandals, where political parties suffered in the next or upcoming elections, or where the careers of politicians who were involved really ended abruptly or took a big hit. Nowadays, it is, well, you can read about it in the papers, yes, but it is not treated as a big scandal and nobody really loses their jobs over this. And if you say now that yes, this looks really bad, but you would have to prove exactly if that donation of this payment really resulted in that law being made or in that stolen money not be asked back, etc., then I have to tell you the following thing. If these things occurred in a similar way in a private company, in the industry, on the free market, these questions would be completely irrelevant. It would be a clear breach of compliance rules, and the involved people would not only instantaneously lose their jobs, they would also face charges. But for some reason, when it happens in politics, then we have gotten used to, or well, I haven't, but it seems like the public has gotten used to these things just happening. And the media, by treating this as not a big deal, and it is the way how they talk about that and how they write about that, that makes people comfortable in thinking that this is not really a big deal. Yes, it's not pleasant, but that politician should be allowed to go on, and maybe I will even vote for his party again. So it's not like the laws have changed or something, it is that the people for some reason have gotten used to it and they're not willing anymore to sanction this kind of behavior, and the media is also not scandalizing it. And this creates, of course, the ideal environment for never before encountered levels of corruption, and not only a new order of magnitude in quantity, but I think also a new quality has been reached where it can be done in a very overt way and it even can be uncovered, but nothing happens. People shrug their shoulders and go on with their days. It is just another Tuesday in Germany. Alright, let me know what you think about that in the comments down below, and I hope you also check me out in 2022. I will continue to cover events from Germany, of course, but let's see what new direction my channel might be taking. So long, Servus, Kameraden.